Welcome to Alcohol-Free Superpowers, the podcast for those questioning the role of alcohol in their lives and choosing clarity over conditioning. I'm your host, Jennifer Reed. We're talking truth, transformation, and what really takes to reclaim your power. Let's dive in. So I got Hadley today, who's an author, mom, a runner, and I'm sure a lot more that you'll tell us about. So thank you so much for joining me and on this episode. I'd love to hear about when you started drinking and how you came to quit, and of course, about your book that you have written and where people can find you. So if you just want to start with where it all started for you.
Sure, of course. And thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and get to share my story, especially at a time of the year when I know that so many people are kind of thinking about their drinking and maybe reconsidering things. So for me, my journey with alcohol really started when I was 14 years old. Which feels crazy to think about now, but I now know that's a really common age for people, right? I was 14. I got drunk for the first time at a friend's house whose grandparents were out of town, and he had the key to her place, and we drank all of grandma's like mint schnapps. It was horrible. And that was the first time I got drunk. And it was like this little switch flipped for me because, as like we were just talking about, as somebody who was introverted, awkward, I mean, everyone sort of is at that age, but I felt like I didn't quite fit in or I didn't belong. All of these feelings were probably super normal at the time, but I didn't know that. And it was like, wait a second, alcohol really helps with this, I thought, right? I was like, oh my gosh, I'm onto something. And so from that point on, alcohol kind of became my crutch. It helped me fit in, I thought. It helped me be the person I thought everybody wanted me to be. And so I relied on it heavily in a social sense. So I went, from drinking periodically in high school, like when you could get your hands on it, right, in a field, or when you said you were spending the night at a friend's house, to going into the college binge drinking scene and embracing it with open arms. I went to a college that I loved, but it was also, the partying was it was a big scene there, and I drank heavily all through college, and then graduated right into sort of the mommy wine culture scene after college. And, the thing was, it was hard, and it took me so long to decide that it was a problem for me because I drank socially, right? Or what we think of as a social drinker. I didn't always drink every day or even every week. I could take long breaks when I wanted to. It's not like I was drinking alone or, all of those kind of arbitrary criteria we set for what it means to have a problem. I drank the same way everyone was around me was drinking. But when I look back, I know that something about it always felt off to me. It never felt good. I always felt like something was a little bit different about my drinking. I couldn't moderate. It was kind of all or nothing with me. And I never felt good about that. So it took me until I was 41 to kind of wake up and say, wait a second, I don't have to do this. This isn't like a requirement of life that I have to keep drinking and feel crappy about it. If I feel crappy about it, I can stop. And so I did. And it really changed my life in every way. And of course, I wish I had figured it out sooner, but I also think that maybe I figured it out at the exact right point in my life, because it wouldn't have maybe worked if I had tried it sooner. So I love getting to share about it because it was, the single most important decision I ever made for my health, my happiness, my family. It just had a positive impact in so many ways. So when I decided to write my book pretty soon after quitting, it was because the Quit Lit books that were out there at the time were amazing, and they were a really big part of my journey. But most of them were more the kind of stereotypical rock bottom stories, which is great. We need those. They still helped me, but I didn't feel like anyone was telling the tail from that gray area that we kind of know about now. And now there's lots of books in that space, and it's fantastic. But that was what initially drove me to tell my story and write the book, because I was hoping it might reach somebody who was kind of in that place where I was. And, if I had read a book that said, hey, it doesn't matter if you meet these criteria. If it feels like a problem for you, it's a problem. Maybe I would have made a change sooner.
Yeah, I think that the whole gray area, it is social drinking, and exactly, it's harder, or I shouldn't say harder, but, well, it probably is in some sense. People don't look at you and say, you don't have a problem. You could go weeks without it. But you're right, social, which, like I said, I can relate to. It's 5-7 drinks in one sitting, which you don't feel good the next day. And you do go, why am I doing this? But
And it's crazy how normalized that is. How normalized it is to, binge drink in so many settings. And when I say I drank the same way everyone around me was drinking, everybody was binge drinking. That's just kind of it was sort of part of our social lives. I now know that I was not the only one that didn't feel good about it. And other people are slowly starting to recognize that and do something about it. But in my kind of circles of friends, I was for sure the first one.
Yeah, and that's hard too, because then you want the sober friend, or the friend who's also either drinking or not drinking or cutting back. Yeah. Did you get pushback from your friends?
Interestingly, I didn't get much. I think there were several kind of phases of that. In the beginning, I don't think people really believed me. They were like, oh, this isn't going to last. Because, to be clear, this is the last time I quit drinking, right? There were many other times when I said, I'm never drinking again, or I'm doing dry January, or I'm taking a break, and I would take a month off or whatever. So I think there was a period where people were like, oh, great, good for you. Yeah, okay, so we'll plan something in next month, and then it'll be back to normal. And then there was a period where a few of my friends have said, oh, we were kind of sad because, drunk Hadley was fun, and are we really not going to have that anymore? And then it quickly shifted into this realization, like, wow, this is really good for you. You're really happy. You really feel good about this. And the people that were important really kind of supported that. So I was lucky in that regard. But also, I will say maybe it was easier because I'm at a point in my life where I'm not going out and partying like I used to. That's not what my social life looks like. So it would have probably been more difficult if I was still in a different phase of my life.
So you mentioned not necessarily having the typical rock bottom. What did you use to quit? And I understand that the years, same thing, off and on, I think is very common. I think the average is 7 to 10 years when people realize that, like, hey, maybe I should not do this. And then when they finally quit. But what did you use? Or did you have a program or the social media?
Yeah, so I look back and recognize that I kind of made up my own, right? I hadn't, when I made this choice, I didn't know really about Sober Instagram yet. I was actually a health and fitness coach, and I used social media very heavily as part of my business. But I had not discovered that little corner of the algorithm, right? It was just starting to kind of blossom, and I didn't know about it. I wish that I had. I soon found it, and it was a big help. So for me, what happened was, I woke up one morning in August with a hangover, and I knew I was going to have to miss my long run that was scheduled for that day, and I was kind of miserable, and I had the spins, and I was laying there, and it was like this, really felt like this nudge or this awakening where I was like, why am I doing this? If I'm so miserable, I don't have to keep doing this. And I just sat there in my bed and thought, this is it. I'm done. And so I went back to sleep for a little bit. I woke up and had this attitude like, this is going to be my last hangover, and I'm going to sit with it today, and then I'm going to make sure it never happens again. And I ordered that morning, once I got up, I ordered Holly Whitaker's book because I had seen something about it mentioned somewhere. I was like, I'm going to read this book. I think I ordered Sober Curious was the other one. And I'm not at all suggesting that this is a formula, because in fact, I would do it differently, right? Mm-hmm. But in my head, I thought, okay, I'm not ready to tell people like I'm done drinking forever. Like, nobody's going to believe me. What if I fail? They're going to think this is ridiculous. So I said, I'm doing 75 hard, that like fitness kind of health program, which is super problematic, I know. But, because I'm a runner and really into fitness and nutrition, I was kind of doing all of the other things already, but there was this like no drinking caveat, and so you had to check that box every day. So I kind of made it my alibi, like for the rest of that summer. I was like, I'm doing 75 hard, I can't drink. And it kind of helped. Like I realize now you don't have to tell the world that you're done drinking or whatever. That was helpful for me. But so while I was kind of operating under that alibi, I was reading Quit Lit books. I was doing lots and lots of self-care, right? I started talking about it with the people that were close to me and kind of sharing my thoughts. And while I didn't say like I'm done drinking forever, I started talking for the first time about how the drinking made me feel and why I was struggling with it. My own family, my husband didn't even know that I was like struggling with this internally. So it was kind of that sense of community that I was creating on my own, the self-care, and educating myself through books. And I devoured Quit Lit books. I mean, I read so many in the first couple of months. It was insane. And then I started journaling and kind of writing my own story because I've always been a writer. That's kind of how I process things. And it was through that process of reading these Quit Lit books and then kind of journaling about my own experience where I decided I was going to write a book. And that was really, really therapeutic for me. So I'm not at all suggesting that it's like a replicable formula for sobriety, right? But it was just what worked for me. It was what I needed. I eventually then found the Instagram space and got really plugged into that. And that became a huge, component of my experience because I found so much support and community out there. It was really amazing.
Yeah, definitely. You feel validated, like, oh, I'm not the only one. Like,
yeah, because I thought I was for so long.
Definitely. So, does your husband drink?
He does. He is what I refer to as sort of a moderation unicorn. Mm-hmm. He can take it or leave it. There's no perfect definition of moderation and all of that. Mm-hmm. But if you're to think of that word, he's kind of the perfect example. He drinks really infrequently, just totally different than I was. I don't mind him drinking. If I had needed him to stop, I think he would have if that had been important to me, but it wasn't. He rarely drinks at home anymore. It's like, okay, out to a special dinner and he might order a cocktail, but he's been really, really supportive. And I did ask early on, one of the sort of boundaries I asked for was that he just not drink red wine at home because that was my thing.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm just not sure I'm ready to see you drinking. Like, I can't have a bottle sitting around and a glass in the sink, or I just wasn't ready for that. And interestingly, over Christmas, he was gifted a bottle of wine from someone at work, and on Christmas Eve or something, he said, do you mind if I have a glass of wine? I was like, what wine? We don't have any wine. And he's, showed me this bottle he got, and I was like, of course, I don't care. So it doesn't bother me at all now.
Okay.
But he's very supportive.
Mm-hmm. And so you're a mom. I don't know how your kids are, but how do you anticipate, or maybe it already has come up, the discussion? Because I think that's something else. Is it's hard. You got teenagers and they think it's cool, and you're like, I was too, or
Yeah. Well, so My two younger boys are 14 and 16 right now. So they
Okay.
are at that age. We are in the throes of the teenage stuff. And actually the age they were when I quit, they were just old enough that they were starting to understand. And I really brought them in on it. Like, I talked about it a lot. We talked very openly about it. One of them listens to all of the podcasts I speak on and laughs that I say the same thing on all of them. I'm like, this is my story. It doesn't
Right.
it doesn't change. He'll be like, "Oh, you said that again." Yeah, so we're super open about it. They understand why I quit, but they also see that their dad does still drink. There's no like villainizing alcohol over here. We talk about it very openly and honestly. I do share why it is important to me that they don't drink as teenagers, knowing that teenagers' literal jobs are to like push boundaries and so if they, when they do choose to drink at some point, there's not going to be any judgment. There's not going to be any, we set rules, like we set rules for everything, and if they're broken, then we'll deal with that accordingly. But they know that they can always call me for a ride. If they're ever in a situation that feels uncomfortable, they, no questions asked. We're really open about it. And I feel like that's been super important. I mean, at this point, I have a 16-year-old who is in no way interested in drinking. And if he was, we would talk about that and, that would be okay too. There's just no judgment, and they support me and they kind of cheer me on, and they know I'm writing another book, and they ask questions about when it's coming and all of that. So it's been a really cool experience to kind of go through it along with them.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. And so one of the things I like to emphasize are the benefits. And will you touch on some that you've seen by not drinking anymore, as well as maybe some that, you hear about the typical ones, maybe some that are not typical that came into your life that you didn't realize when you quit that would be such a blessing?
Yeah, well, there's, the typical ones were all there, right? Better sleep, my physical health improved, just all of those things. But the ones that I didn't really expect as much were things like my confidence, right?
Yeah.
My sense of self-worth, this feeling that like I'm always the same version of myself. There's no more blackout badly, which was kind of my, drunken alter ego name. And there's a confidence that comes with being able to trust yourself and know that you're going to keep the promises you make to yourself. And I didn't realize how much I was missing when I was sort of chipping away at that every time I blacked out or got too drunk when I swore I wouldn't. And that has really been life-changing. And this sense of peace that comes from that, and the peace that comes from knowing that I'm always kind of living in alignment with my morals and values, that has been huge. There was a sense of chaos that always went on when drinking was in the mix. In fact, I was just talking about this in a post, another sort of unexpected one. January for me was always about these big dramatic resolutions. And some of them would be about like nutrition or fitness or whatever. But really at the end of the day, it always came back to drinking. Every January was me saying, I need to stop drinking for a while, or I need to cut back, or this year is going to be different. And it's just really kind of steady and peaceful without that. I rolled into the new year. I feel good. I don't have any big dramatic resolutions. It's just about staying consistent with the healthy practices that I'm already consistent with. And it just feels really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting because, I think as a 14-year-old, I probably started drinking for confidence. And then to realize that you take that away is when you actually get the real deal. So.
Yeah, another one kind of related to that is the fact that I have learned in sobriety to appreciate myself as an introvert, whereas from the time I was 14, that first time I drank for that artificial confidence and a sense of belonging and all of that, I never really learned how to just sit with myself and accept that I was an introvert and I just never accepted it. I always sort of fought against it. And once I quit drinking, I was like, you know what? I don't have to keep pretending. Being an introvert is fine, and I'm going to learn how to do it, right? And enjoy it. And I really do now.
Yeah. Have you read the book? I think it's called Quiet. It's all about introvert.
I have not read it yet, but it is on my list.
Yeah. No, it's really good because it does, I think being an extrovert, people are drawn to them because they're outgoing and they're talking and, but it also talks about the value of introverts in the world. So you have your book on Amazon. Where else?
So Instagram is kind of where I spend most of my time in the social media world. I'm just at Hadley_Sorensen. I took a nice break for the first time in a long time over the holidays, and so I'm back and trying to get in the swing of things. So I love connecting with people on my Instagram. Like you said, my book, The Dirty Truth on Social Drinking, is available on Amazon. I'm working on a second book now, and that is still kind of in the alcohol space, but it's very different than the first one. So I'll be excited to share more about that as I get a little further along. And I have a website. It's hadleysorensen.com. So I'm happy to connect with people there as well.
Awesome. Now, are you coaching or doing any?
I am not coaching. I am trying to, I will be honest, sort of figure out what I want to be when I grow up in the sobriety space. And right now, I really am just focusing on my writing because I kind of feel as an introvert, right? That's where I want to be able to contribute. But yeah, so I'm still trying to kind of figure that out. But I do like to still share my story on Instagram because I know there's a lot of people out there that might not have access to stories like this otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. I would just say, especially kind of in the new year, if you're questioning your relationship with alcohol in any way, listen to that inner voice. It's worth exploring. Don't ignore that nudge for as long as I did. It's worth getting curious and exploring and at least figuring out why you're questioning.
If today's episode hit home, you're not alone and you're not broken. You're waking up. If you're ready for more honesty, more clarity, and more real talk, make sure to follow, share, or leave a review. And if no one told you today, you're powerful AF. Catch you next time on Alcohol-Free Superpowers.